And Rav Hutner, the Baal Pachad Yitzchak, says there was no shortage of difficulties that I had in my life fighting against these enlighteners, these maskilim. But you know the real reason of why I stayed glued to the Torah? He says, I'll tell you a story. There was one time a little boy, 8-year-old boy, and this 8-year-old boy had a tough life. Not a tough life like today's tough life where he doesn't have the new PlayStation. Real tough life. Sometimes you don't have food for a few days. That kind of tough life. And one day, he came back from the cheder and he tells his Ima, we just finished Masechet Baba Batra. Ima turned around, went inside the room, without telling him a word. 10 minutes later, his Ima comes out of the room with a gown, a beautiful gown. You only go to events. Makeup on, celebrating, and starts celebrating, taking all the candy and different treats she got for Shabbat, prepared for a special day, and starts saying, Ima, what's happening? It says, it's Yom Tov, son, it's Yom Tov. No, what Yom Tov? It's no, Ima, what do you mean? It says it's Yom Tov. It's Yom Baba Batra. It's Chag Baba Batra. My mother, he says, she started crying from celebrating in happiness because the 8-year-old boy finished a few Mishnayot. She started celebrating as if it was a Yom Tov. Guess what Rav Hutner says? I was that little boy. And seeing how happy my mother was when I completed some Torah, when I learned some Torah, gave me the strength to hold on and cleave to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His Torah for the rest of my life. I never stopped learning Torah. Why? Because that minute that I saw that my mother celebrated the honor of the Torah more than she celebrated anything else I've ever seen in my life, more than she celebrated weddings, more than she celebrated making money, more than she celebrated any other pleasure in the world. When it came to the Torah, she said she put on a gown, she made a special meal, she started crying from happiness. That gave me strength for the rest of my life. Because at that moment, I knew the Torah is the most important thing in the world. Rabotai Yikarim, some of us are older. So we didn't have the childhood of having our parents tell us that the Torah is the most important thing in the world when we were 8 years old. But you know what? In HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, you're still 8 years old. When Sani completes Masechet Shabbat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is coming out and celebrating and crying in Shamayim and celebrating with him and his Kala Batya and his daughters, saying, Ishtabach Shimolad, look, my son is finishing Masechet Shabbat. When the brothers completed Masechet Brachot, what do you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu was doing in Shamayim with all of the Malachim? HaKadosh Baruch Hu was dancing and crying because his two kids that converted just a couple years ago already finished a few Masechtot in the Gemara. They became part of Am Yisrael, but not just part of Am Yisrael by going to some Bet Din and putting a hat on. They became part of Am Yisrael by going and inheriting and acquiring the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts dancing in Shamayim, celebrating the honor and the kavod of the Torah. When every single one of you comes to a Shiur Torah and not to eat, and not to sleep, and not to chit-chat with each other, but to come learn Torah after a long work day, and after a tough day, and after all the problems that you have, and you come and you learn, and you want to become a better Jew, a better person, at 9 o'clock at night, at 10 o'clock at night, at 11 o'clock at night, at any other time, because you made the Torah the number one thing in your life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu stops every single thing he's doing, and he starts celebrating in Shamayim. Look at my kids. 3,332 years after I gave them the Torah, they still made it number one.